What's up, interpreters? I'm Jedda Foreman. I'm with the Lawrence Hall of Science, and I lead our group that does a lot of learning design and educational research and translates that into tools and services for the STEM learning field.
What's up, interpreters? This is Song, your NAI conferences manager.
What is up, interpreters? I am Paul Caputo, Executive Director for NAI. Jedda, thank you so much for being here, and thanks for coming on and talking about the work that you do with the Lawrence Hall of Science. I have a very basic question for you. What is the Lawrence Hall of Science?
The Lawrence Hall of Science is UC Berkeley's science center, so we're part of the university. We're up on the hill, so we look down on the university in
Hmm.
some ways. And
Is that, are you being metaphorical about that, or is
You
that
take it how you want to take it. So, what is kind of weird about the Lawrence Hall of Science is not only are we a science center, but we also design instructional materials that millions of students use in classrooms every day. And then we also do tons of learning design and educational research that impacts our peer institutions around the world. So, that's one way that's kind of weird, different, and special about us.
I love weird, different, and special.
we just got the title of this episode too, Weird, Different, and Special.
I love it.
Could that be the three of us? Let's not do
Yeah.
that.
Oh, that's a whole other podcast. Jedda, I had the pleasure of meeting you in person and getting a tour of the Lawrence Hall Science Center. And first of all, that's kind of a mouthful. Do you have an abbreviation? Your
Yeah,
place?
we call ourselves the Lawrence.
Mm.
Ooh.
Yeah.
For people who know you really well, is it just the Larry?
I like the L.
The
I'm
L.
trying to
Okay, the
bring
L is
that
good.
in. Yeah, yeah.
Well, so I again had the pleasure of meeting you in person, getting a nice tour from you. There are a lot of different elements in the L. How do you decide like what the exhibits are? And I there was this music exhibit and a food exhibit, and I mean it was all over the place, but it was awesome. So how who gets to decide what exhibits go in there?
Yeah, my peer, Claudia Bustos, is the executive director of our science center, and she works with her team really closely. And what's one thing that's really special about us is we do a ton of community design work. And so we have several projects, some that are grant funded, some that are just kind of embedded within the Lawrence Hall of Science, so that we're working with communities and actually having community members determine what they want to see in our science center and how they want to see it. So for our Future of Food exhibit, that was co-designed with like 20 different community members, and every element of Future of Food was something that was important to a community member to see represented in a science center.
Making science accessible to visitors who are at a site in their free time is a huge challenge, right? You have a non-captive audience and you're trying to educate them about science. So it's not just a question of making it accessible and comprehensible, but actually entertaining and fun. What are your strategies for enticing people to come learn about science during their leisure time?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the strategies for that is like just broadening the definition of science. Like science is so much more than what, people are doing in their lab coats or like pipetting things from one disc to another or whatever. And so we really try to help everyone who walks through the doors of the Lawrence Hall of Science that like they're already scientists. They're already making sense of the world. They already have scientific knowledge, sometimes, passed down through generations. Their community holds scientific knowledge, and that knowledge has helped guide their decisions and their priorities, etc. And so I think one thing is just kind of breaking down science into something that's not so intimidating and scary and really like affirming that like kids, youth, families, like they already know a lot of science, and that knowledge is just as important as anything that a, lab coat person is doing. And then, like, in addition, like, part of that for us is really building on interactive. So, like, we really want kids to be, and youth and grown-ups to be making sense for themselves what different concepts mean. We would much rather ask a question and have someone respond to, like, how that connects to their own lived experiences than introduce a new vocabulary word or something like that. Like, for us, it's really not about memorizing facts. It's really about how someone makes sense of understanding a concept.
So, for example, in the exhibit about music. That was so cool. And the committee went bananas in there. So interactive, so fun. We were touching everything. There was lots of noise happening, going on, a little chaotic, and there were only like six of us in there. So, how do you approach interpretation with such a hands-on and fast-paced, going through your exhibits can be pretty fast-paced, I'm assuming. So how do you handle that? How do you actually get into interpretive messaging in an environment like that?
That's an interesting question. I think we really spend a lot of time in our design process thinking th like we go really, really broad at first, really divergent. We try to narrow then down into like what are the most important concepts that we want kids to come away with here, and then figuring out like what are the interactives that are going to help them create that themselves. So like our dwell time is actually pretty good on our exhibits because there's so much interaction, there's so much interactivity, there's so much play, there's so much enjoyment, there's so many buttons to push, there's so many different ways that that looks. And so I think because of that, we get a lot of engagement. We get decent, for kids, when I say like decently long, it's still, a minute or two or something. But it feels really different than like having to put verbiage on a sign because the kids want to be there. They want to be playing. They want to be constructing their own ukulele and figuring out how the length of the, ukulele arm is impacting the sound that the strings make.
I'm just looking at your website right now, and I'm having way too much fun with it. In the section where you've got for educators, for partners, and for visitors is one of them. It starts climb a DNA strand, explore the cosmos, meet a chinchilla, which that the scale there, DNA, cosmos, chinchilla. I really enjoyed that. But there is there's a real variety of activities, and you've got the outdoor nature lab, and then you've got exhibits on the interior. How do you create a consistent theme for those experiences, or do you? Are there individual themes for the different kinds of experiences?
Yeah, I would say the theme maybe overall is kind of more along the lines of like you're a scientist, you can be a scientist, and so with that in mind, visitors can really follow their own interest and take that, wherever it goes. And so there's if the science that they want to explore is through slow motion film and how you make or like how you make like stop motion films, we have booths where kids can do that and I've sat with kids, nephews and nieces for like 45 minutes while they just like figure out how to make a stop motion film. And it has nothing to do with DNA or food or music or anything like that, right? But they're still figuring out for themselves and making those connections and, engaging in scientific practices of mind.
I love the kind of that overarching theme that, you can be a scientist. That just lends itself so well to the fact that you have such deep collaboration within the community, within different communities within the Oakland area, in the Oakland Hills area, which then I would imagine, right, as a kid or anybody coming to the L, we're gonna get this to stick,
I
Jeddah,
like
the
it.
L, they can see themselves there, right? Because you've done such work with this collaboration within the communities. Do you want to talk a little bit more about those collaborations and maybe one of the most recent exhibits that you've partnered with?
Yeah, I think one of the collaborations that has been the most like humbling, exciting, interesting the last few years has been with the Ohlone community in the East Bay. And so we got a grant from the National Science Foundation about 3 years ago to co-design mixed reality exhibits with Ohlone youth and community members. So mixed reality just means like bringing in virtual reality, augmented reality, and it was a really perfect fit for thinking about how we bring in traditional ecological knowledge and knowledge that's been passed down generation after generation into also our present day. And so through that collaboration, the last 3 years, we co-designed three different exhibits together, and We called that program the Tapanak Shekma, Ohlone Youth Science Diplomats, and Tapanak Shekma in Chochenyo, the language that was at first spoken in Berkeley and the language of the East Bay Ohlone folks. Tape means to teach and to learn at the same, like it's the same word that means both concepts. And it was such a beautiful just example of that. Like we were learning, the youth were teaching us about game design and like open world versus closed world game design. Like I'm not a video game person. I was like hanging on every word. We were teaching them about learning design. We were working with a professor down on UC Berkeley campus and a grad student who are computer interaction designers who were bringing in this mixed reality expertise. And then we were learning a ton from the Ohlone community members about traditional ecological knowledge and what they know about this world and seeing it and new perspectives. And so that was really incredible. And we're thrilled in May 17th, we'll be installing the first one of those exhibits in our lobby. And so Auntie Dottie, the matriarch of the East Bay Ohlone community, will be welcoming folks to the Lawrence and sharing her wisdom of how to gather acorns and how to do that in ways that are in reciprocity with the ecosystem around you.
When I took my kids to museums when they were little, they're both in college now, which is it's just a weird thing to say. One of the ways that we would get them, they actually loved a good science museum. We have a great one in Denver. We have one here in Fort Collins as well. But one of the ways we would get them to the museum is by promising them chicken tenders at the cafeteria. I'm noticing that your partnership with the Ohlone community extends to the cafeteria that you were talking about, to the cafe. That's a really, that's not something that every science museum does. And I think that's a really significant decision that you made to include what you are describing on the website as Ohlone forward cuisine, which I really like. Ohlone forward cuisine. I'm curious, first of all, what is that? What is Ohlone forward cuisine? And what went into the decision organizationally to reflect that in your cafeteria?
Yeah, so that's the Amatka Cafe. It actually just opened in February. It's been awesome. Two leaders in the Ohlone community and the East Bay Ohlone community, Vince Medina and Louis Trevino, founded a few years ago, several years ago now, Cafe Ohlone, which was the first Ohlone cafe in the world. It was in downtown Berkeley, and a lot of it really featured kind of pre-contact, pre-colonial Ohlone food. And as they ran that cafe, they were, I think, really started to feel like they wanted to represent not just pre-contact and kind of traditional Ohlone food, but also the food that Ohlone people eat every day today. And so that's where the opportunity arose to create a matka. And so a matka is really this beautiful blend of like traditional Ohlone foods that Ohlone people have eaten in Berkeley forever, as well as chicken tenders and tater tots, which Ohlone people love to eat today. And I think from an institutional perspective, I think it felt just like such a win-win to say yes to. Like I don't think there was any pushback or backlash in the organization at all. It just felt like we have been working with Vince and Lewis now for 5 or 6 years. We've worked on all these different projects. We have Chochenyo throughout the Lawrence Hall of Science, and including that is really important in all of our exhibits and spaces and how we welcome folks to understand the world around them and particularly our East Bay world. And so having the bringing in the element of food and knowing how important that is to people's families and cultures and community and letting us like being able to showcase Ohlone food as a part of that just felt like how could we not do that?
And I will say, I did have lunch there, and yes to the duck sandwich, yes to the vegan wrap, and yes to the chia brownie.
How
It's
much
all
did
very
you eat
good.
there, Song? That's first of all, Song referencing, the site visit where Song got to meet you all and participate in all these things. I'm having real FOMO because for the first time in many years, I was not on that site visit this year. So every
Well,
time you bring
Paul,
this up, Song, the FOMO is real.
Paul, that's how come I ate two lunches, one for
One
you.
one was for me. Well, I hope you went to an Oakland Ballers game for me then as well, because that would have been part of the experience if I had been there.
Hey, you should have seen that itinerary. We were jam-packed. Jetta, how the heck did you get involved in interpretation in the
Hmm.
first place?
Yeah, it's been like one of those things that as just I've kind of like every step I've taken has kind of gotten me deeper into it. But I think growing up, I grew up in like a relatively rural area, like a little over an hour north of San Francisco, and just having time in nature, having time outside. I took a lot of walks with my family after school, and that was just always like the place that felt special and important to me, and like where I would go in times of stress or worry or angst. And so I think just going to college and like finding a career after college, I kept wanting to find ways where like both I could stay connected to the outdoors and to nature, and where I could make sure that other people felt like that was an accessible and safe option for them too. And I'm really happy that I've landed here.
So, as I said, I was not there on the site visit, but I've really enjoyed learning about the L through the website and through conversations with Song. It's obviously very clear that issues of diversity, equity, inclusion are important to the museum. It feels like it's really integrated into everything that you do, from the exhibits to the food to the visitors who you are welcoming to the site. How is that reflected in the work that you do in the exhibits at the museum? It's evident to me, just from looking at the website and hearing about the experience. But I wanted to give you a chance to sort of comment on that.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I think it's incredibly important, and it's something we talk about all the time. And I think we're kind of constantly having discussions about what equity means, what it looks like, what counts as equitable, what's equity versus equality. And I think I wouldn't say that we have the answers yet, but I do think it's really powerful that we're having the conversations. And I think we have a lot of debate and we have a lot of disagreement, and I think that's really good and important. And I think where I've been really proud in the last couple years that Berkeley and the Lawrence Hall of Science in particular haven't taken equity out of our mission statement. We haven't taken equity off the table. It's still a word that we use with our funders and with our community members. And so I've been really proud that we have maintained that intentionality. I know it's been challenging in this environment to do that. Thinking about broadening what gets counted as science, who gets counted as scientists, that to us feels like equity, and talking about it in terms of increasing the kinds of knowledge and calling out that communities have expertise that is science, that feels radical and equitable to us and part of our mission to create a more equitable science learning field. But we also, it's important to us in our curriculum and how we think about multimodalities and supporting multilingual learners. It's important to us in our professional learning and how we structure our professional learning. Like it's everywhere in our work, and it's still something that we're constantly talking about and debating and figuring out how to do it better.
That's awesome. Okay, you have a 5-year-old daughter, right? What
Yeah.
is her favorite exhibit in the museum? Because I betcha she spends quite a bit of time there.
She does. She calls it her museum. Yeah. And she constantly has ideas. And she's like, will you tell Claudia I have a new exhibit idea? And I'm like, sure. We'll just revise our interpretive plan for you to have your exhibit idea. She does not understand the definition of favorite as like one thing. So like everything is her favorite thing. And it's been so cool. Like we will go one day and she'll spend 2 hours in the Future of Food exhibit. We'll go another day and she'll spend, 90 minutes in the outdoor nature lab with her clipboard just drawing and writing things. And we're going this Saturday and we're gonna hear some plant stories from Vincent Lewis and also see the Flying Lotus girls are doing like some fire art. It's very San Francisco, Burning Manny. So yeah, she truly like I don't know that there's a part that she doesn't like, and it's actually been like probably one of my favorite things of the last 5 years is just seeing the Lawrence Hall of Science through her eyes and having actually like even more appreciation for what we do and how we do it and how we're different than other science centers around.
My kid's favorite at the Fort Collins Science Museum was the piano that you could lift using levers and pulleys and rope. That
Oh,
was
that is cool.
they
Yeah.
thought it was pretty cool that they could lift a piano. So I love that definition of favorite. I'm going to adopt that because I have steadfastly over the years, it's an audio podcast, and so folks can't see. But Jedda, you were commenting earlier on the number of minor league baseball hats that I have on the wall behind me. And over the years, when people have asked me what my favorite minor league baseball logo is, I have, to illustrate a point, that I don't have a favorite or I can't choose a favorite or the favorite changes. I will give them a different answer every time they ask. So anytime, if anyone ever compared notes on what they thought my favorite minor league baseball logo was, they would never know because I answer the question differently every single time. So now I'm just, because they're all my favorites. Every one of them is my favorite. So I love that definition. Jedda, thank you so much. This has been so much fun to learn about your museum and to hear about your approach to interpreting science. It's such important work that you are doing. I'm so glad that NAI is going to be working with you all in our upcoming conference in November. In the meantime, before we get there, where can people go to learn more about the work that you're doing and maybe to check out your awesome menu for your cafe and check out your museum store?
Yeah, go to our website, lawrencehalloofscience.org, and you'll find it all there. Yeah, come visit the Amatka Cafe, get an Ohlone salad, get some Ohlone tater tots, and yeah, check out the rest of the site as well. And I can't wait for NAI to come to Oakland and to host some NAI folks on a field trip and just be part of the community in November.
And interpreters,
That's
That's
what's up.
what's up.